go live in a second. Sometimes it
The
takes a
stream
moment.
is live, it says. That's awesome.
Does it? It doesn't on mine. Oh, no, it does.
Yeah, it
Fantastic.
says on
Okay,
mine.
so today, a bit of an impromptu stream, but I'm with Muzz. Muzz in the middle, I should say. Discovered one of his videos, left a comment, got chatting to Muzz, and we thought it would be a nice idea to have a little stream about politics and such. So,
Yeah.
Muzz, how are you tonight? How are you this evening?
I'm pretty good, Owen. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
No, not at all. It's always nice to have these conversations. So, as the title sort of says, we're going to be talking a little bit about left and right wing values and sort of what they have in terms of meaning in 2025 in a very politically charged world at the moment. So, for
Absolutely.
context, I saw a video by Muzz in which he discussed his maybe reticence would be a word for it, sort of a bit of discontent between where he sees the left as a sort of group and as a movement in 2025 and some of his own values and sort of where that lies in relation to left and right. It'd be better for me to hand you over to Muzz to let him sort of give a little bit of an opening statement of sorts to elaborate on what he sort of feels about it. Go for it, Muzz.
So I think, Owen, as you mentioned, you found me through my video, which is amazing because I just started a whole new channel and didn't even know anyone watched it. But I talked about leaving the left and all that. And it's funny because I'm 47. I'm from Scotland. I've, lived in a few different countries. I now live in Canada. And so I felt like I've defended and maintained my values as someone who's on the left for a long, long time until it reached a point where I couldn't defend it anymore. And there are certain things that I look at and I think, hang on a minute, this is not what I signed up for. I believe in social safety net, universal healthcare, gun control, whatever you. There's tons of left-wing stuff that I really believe in, but now it seems as though nobody ever talks about it. Nobody even talks about environmentalism anymore. Like none of that stuff is a priority. It's all culture war stuff. It's all sex, gender stuff. That's like, we have a society to fix. Maybe we should go back to that. So, yeah.
That's very interesting because in my experience, environmental issues are very much at the centre of any sort of left-wing circle that I've been in. I mean, I'm a little bit younger. I have had slightly less time to experience the world of politics and such, but certainly, I've been around for a little bit, and I think that definitely people are really concerned about the environment and are sort of making it quite front and center of their grievances with society. Now, at the same time, I think it's definitely, as people talking about gender and sort of the way our understanding of these things is mediated in society, and I think there's a very important part of society. I would definitely say, I'm not LGBTQ myself, but it's very important that the rights of everyone are upheld and we've all got a place in society. But I don't see these things as competing forces. I think they definitely both can be advocated for in sort of a whole scale approach, if that makes sense. And I'm really curious as to where the contention is.
No, I hear what you're saying, and it's funny. So it's almost like, in my perspective, now I live in North America, which is unusual. It's an unusual place. You'd normally be talking to a Canadian person with a Canadian accent, but right now you're talking to a Scottish guy. Just so happens that I live here, but and it's different everywhere you go. Like when I lived in New Zealand for 12 years, it was different then too, and so on. But what I've seen here, it's like you've got the basics, like law and order, crime, sex, gender, whatever. Like everybody just has a daily life. But then you've got people who come along, and I feel it's almost as if they've come along to reinvent the wheel, to say, hey, that's not a circle, that's a square. And we're like, yo, that's not a square, that's a circle. And that's how, like, I'm a very much a feminist, a second wave feminist, in that I grew up with a single mom and so on, and I've always been very sensitive to the idea that women need to have their own spaces, things like that, and so I've had to reconcile. Hang on, I'm very much LGBTQ, but at the same time, I'm also very pro woman, and when the women say, "I want my sex based rights, but you're not giving it to me," I'm like, hang on a second, that's, you know what I mean? I'm listening to the women more than I'm listening to the minority, I suppose, in that regard. Does that make sense? Oh, you're muted.
There we go. Thank you. I see what you're saying there, but I'm afraid I don't really agree at all. Unfortunately, I think that the intervention sort of that has taken place, which has positioned women and LGBTQ people against each other, isn't really one that is authentic. I would say that there's no competing elements. There's no like conflict
Well, both can
between
exist
women's
at the same
rights.
time.
Yeah, like in fact they exist naturally together because plenty of people who are female are also LGBTQ. Like they're both sort of the same fights for bodily autonomy and recognition and autonomy and such, right? And I think that especially in today's moment, there's a lot of very bad faith arguments from emanating from sort of fascist areas, which intentionally weaponize not even necessarily people's concerns, people's lack of knowledge, right? Because we shouldn't say people are completely oblivious, but if you don't have prior knowledge of common talking points about transgender people in education and such, and feminism and such, then the way an anti-trans argument is phrased can hook some people in. So, like women's spaces, for instance, I think is a classic one, right? Like
Yeah.
of course, we want a society where everyone's got a space they feel comfortable and safe in, but transgender people aren't in any conflict of that. They're in the same categories, right? It's the intentional sort of insertion of a bad faith talking point to get people fighting against causes that aren't going against each other, which then allows people with genuinely insidious and nasty attitudes, like we're seeing across the far right, to gain a foothold and start making bad faith arguments.
So I would say that one of the arguments I've made, and you'll see this on my channel quite a lot, is that I fear that legitimate trans people, and I know that sounds a little charged, but
It does a bit.
legitimate trans people, those who have actually genuinely had a diagnosis of gender dysphoria and gone through the process, maybe not quickly, but over time, those people are going to feel the backlash from this. I don't think that those people are an issue or the issue at all. I think that the issue is what I would call the white knight coming in on the white horse, riding in to speak for those marginalized people, because we have such an impetus to declare ourselves as a good and moral person. And I've found that a lot of people who I've lived with and worked with are like that. And they're not genuine. They're just not genuine people. They are fake people. They don't really care about trans people. They don't care about gay people. They don't care about lesbians. They don't care about any of them. They just want to be seen as a good person. And that I have a real problem with. Like, maybe it's because my age, but it's authenticity at my point now is so important. And I look at that and I think, you're full of shit. You don't care about that. You don't. And one of the arguments I've found is, and actually in the UK, Owen, I'm assuming you're in England somewhere, in the UK
Yeah,
somewhere,
yeah.
is the Tavistock clinic shut down because so many kids who were autistic and gay were found to be presenting as trans. And they thought, hang on a second, maybe these people are just gay. They're not trans. But instead, there's, as you may know, WPATH, the World Professional Association of Transgender Health, they have recommended, and most people have accepted, the concept that it's all about affirmation, not about questioning. It has to be affirmation. And so with affirmation comes so many risks, because a child can affirm to be anything. And so I'm uncomfortable with allowing kids who don't have the ability to get a tattoo, have sex, get married, serve in the military, pay taxes, get a job. We even have an entirely separate judicial system for those who are underage, and that's common across the world, not just in the Western world. Why are we allowing them to dictate their future bodily, you know what I mean? Like, they cannot consent to hormones and so like puberty blockers and surgeries and so on. Now, I know that's the extreme. Don't get me wrong. I know there's social transition and there's medical transition, but a great deal of those who socially go to medical because of the affirmation, I guess, policy. I don't know what to call it policy, but you know what I mean. Like, it's a kind of a recommended thing.
Yeah, the thing is, though, this is what is scientifically supported. This is what is experts who are in the field, and obviously the people themselves, right, who are ultimately the central figures in this. This is the best approach to support young people who are transgender. Transgender, I think, because of the way English language is developed, and because we have a long history of, firstly, quite openly anti-LGBTQ existence in society.
Totally, yeah.
And then secondly, just sort of a confusing development of language. Like, sex and gender are, for a lot of people, just the same sort of thing. Like, you say, what is my gender? What is my
sex? They get
sex?
conflated all the time, yeah.
Exactly, right? So that makes it hard for a lot of people to hear a term like transgender and separate it from, an operation or like a particular anatomical feature. However, the stuff that happens for young people who are getting transforming care isn't some dangerous or devastating thing. The science actually really supports it, quite overwhelmingly so. I'll happily provide some papers and such which support this in the chat or something. But I think that some of the stuff you were saying about legitimate trans people, I think, it is a little bit. It's not even a little bit. Just it's not very. Not something that I think is worthy of support, because ultimately.
Go away. I'm sorry, my family just barged in.
It's all right. Yeah. So like ultimately, people have the autonomy to best know themselves, right? And when we think about children,
people know themselves. I agree with. Sorry to interrupt, Owen. I know that people know themselves. I totally agree with that, but not when they're 8.
Well, you would argue that the stuff they've been, like we live in a society which has been gendered for us, right? Like, we live in a society in which patriarchal norms and such, cis heteronormative norms have shaped the way we perceive things like gender and sex and our roles in society. So,
I agree with that.
Sorry?
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
But only in so much that the only reason you and I are here talking about this online, the only reason we're here at all is because of heteronormativity. We would not exist without that. Do you know what I mean?
No, I don't agree with that. The biology, there's a biological reason we're here, like a literal.
No, that's what I mean. Heteronormativity is a default position between male and female having babies. The only reason our species is here is because of that.
It's because of the biology, but the heteronormativity is something which is socially produced, right? Like the fact that
sorry, maybe I misunderstand. Sorry, but
okay, let me try and explain. So we know about reproduction, right? We know how biologically human life is created and the processes that have to go into it. What heteronormativity focuses on is the social construction of things like gender and things that have been assigned to us by our society. Now, that isn't to say that there is an element of existence there. No one's saying that, like, I don't know, the womb is a fantasy. Of course it's real. What we're saying is that the idea that there are fixed gender points to it, and that society is coded inherently to be heterosexual, which is ultimately a socially constructed thing. Like, we aren't inherently one way or the other. Like, there's a whole element to it. That is what is being focused on. So then to fast forward that a little bit, the child, like, we all ultimately learn our gender through society. Like, when you're a baby, you're not thinking about I am male, I am female. You're just a human kid, right? And so the fact that the child which says, yeah, actually, I don't really correspond to what, like, even though the doctor said I was a boy and my parents have called me John or whatever, actually, that doesn't really match to me. It's not that they have, oh, yes, they have decided one day, it's like they've had something put onto them which doesn't fit them in the same. Like, it's like if you said, to this kid, your favourite colour is red. Like, and that kid then grows up and says, well, hang on a second, I actually prefer orange and yellow.
Of course, yeah.
The red decision happened first, right? And so this is a similar sort of way of looking at it.
Interesting. I feel like a lot of your focus of what you just said was all on gender, and that's cool. And actually, interestingly, like, because I'm a citizen of like 3 different countries, I've got passports that say one says male, one says sex, one says gender, but they mean the same thing. One says M, the other says M. One says sex, one says gender. It doesn't matter. It's always been interchangeable until recently. Now, this is where, as a 47-year-old, maybe this is where I'm like, yo, this doesn't make any sense, because I swear to God, Owen, this whole gender and sex conflation and separation is very recent, very recent. So I have an argument that. And I feel like it's a mathematical argument. Right now on planet Earth, there are something like 8 billion people, and in the entirety of human history, there's been 120 billion people. Okay. Every single one of them, not 99.9 or 99.999, 100% of those people who've ever lived, our species, who can have what we have right now, the internet, where we talk right now, every single one, 100% of them, was birthed by a female. Every single one. Not one was not birthed by a female. So if we take sex as a procreation system, it's actually remarkable in that how binary it is. It's not like very few things are binary in life. But sex actually is incredibly binary. Like, we all have a mother. It's not there's no debate. There's no gray area. It's 100%. And that's a big sample size to take a vote from.
We can critically analyze that, though, can't we? So we're correct. Everyone has, to an extent, this statement is true. But let's think about it critically. It's not that everyone has come from a mother. It's that everyone has been produced by by a womb, right? But female. The assigning of that as inherently female is what
assigning. Sorry, I have to interrupt you. Assigning is bringing into question an absolute.
But it's not an absolute.
But it is.
So like, imagine
every single human being who's ever lived was birthed by a female, not a male. Don't worry about gender. Don't worry about gender. Let's just talk about sex. And even think of sex as a spectrum if you want.
Not. But Muzz, we're assigning here. Like, can we understand that whilst, of course, no one's saying that, like, I don't know, our mothers were not mothers. Like, no one's saying that. What we're saying is that it's not like an inherent, yes, this is X, Y, X is true for all X. It's not as though the first humans before civilization, before we had language and such, they had no concept of what we're talking about now. It's just humans existing and such.
True, they didn't have the labels, they didn't have the language.
Muzz, almost finished. Our classifications of sex and gender have been created analogous to what is our biology, but not something which is it can never be like a one-to-one match. It's something which is like a model that we create, and so as we move, and alongside that is also the socially constructed like patriarchy and cis heteronormativity and such, and the way that gender is policed and maintained through social structures. And that is a powerful thing. Like you look at other sort of problems in society, like racism and such, and they're things which, because they're structured into the way we exist in society, they feel real to people. A lot of people,
Yeah, I agree with that.
we can sit here and know that ultimately our skin tone differences are just melanin differences in the
Yeah,
skin.
of
A lot
course.
of people see it as some immutable truth, right? And so, in a similar way, it's taken a long time. Like people have been used to the ultimately assumption that you are born from like a woman, someone who is female, and it's true in most cases. Most people who will give birth,
Most, most, ca-
99.9%, will be female. But it's not going to be like not everyone's gender identity and the sex they'll call themselves is going to match up with that.
that's where we disagree, I suppose, is the gender identity thing. So I'm thinking about sex. I'm not thinking about gender. Like, I am not thinking about gender. I'm thinking about two things, male and female. I'm a father. I have two kids. I know how it works. I was there. I did I cut the cord, and I know how the human reproduction system works in real life. I've seen it. I've done it. I've participated in it. It's not ambiguous. It's binary. It's
But
one
that's not
male and one female. That's all. Now, you can layer gender identity upon that if you want to, and you can have an argument about how you feel and social roles and so on and so forth. But as far as sex goes, biological sex goes, it's like the most binary thing I can think of. Most things are not binary. This one
but then
is.
that's that
120 billion human beings have ever lived, and 120 billion of them were born by a female. Not one
but
was born
Muzz,
by a
that
male. Don't think
isn't
about gender, think about sex. That's all I'm
we
saying.
are thinking about sex, and that isn't quite true. I mean, firstly, it's not the most binary thing we can think of because, look, like for instance, right in front of us now, we've got computers, right?
Oh, yeah,
They
I mean, I'm
run
sure there
on
are other
binaries,
binary
like,
things we can think of. Yeah, I'm sure.
but like a binary is a strict, one or zero, yes or no. Like, there's a light in my room,
I
right? The
would say
light is
intersex
on
people
or
would
off.
definitely call into question the idea of a sex binary. There would definitely be a little bit of a gray area in the middle for sure. But for the vast majority, it's pretty binary.
Bimodal tends
Bimodal,
towards
bimodal, yeah,
synchronous,
yeah, yeah, bimodal.
which is not a
Probably a good
strict
answer.
binary.
Yeah. But there cannot be a human baby born. There cannot be one human baby born without one of these and one of these
Egg cell, sperm cell.
together. That's
Yeah,
two. That's
but that
binary. It doesn't take three. It doesn't take five. It doesn't take one. It doesn't take 18. It takes two. One male and one female. That's the only reason we're having this
so there,
conversation.
there, Muzz, there. So I was agreeing. Yeah, we need an egg cell and a sperm cell. That is, of course, the biology. The idea that then that creates the categories male and female is what is being questioned because that
Okay. So you're
category.
thinking of male and female as a gendered category rather than a sexual category, maybe?
Well, the two are essentially, largely the same, right? Like, there's not
Mm,
no
no.
one is contesting how reproduction works. It's the stuff that is being put onto that by the rest. Because ultimately, a trans person, no one's been like, yes, I'm going to change human history. We're going to do it differently. All a trans person is someone whose gender does not match with what they were assigned with at
Agreed.
birth, right?
Agreed. Yeah.
And it's the way that this is weaponized against them, which is the issue. Like ultimately, no one. It's not, like I get very frustrated when you hear all these sort of conservatives being like, yeah, trans people they're just causing biological disarray. They're making all things go away. No, they're not. All trans people, all transgender people are people whose gender identity does not match with what they are, assigned at birth.
So
However, it's important to also recognise that the sort of argument that is being made here, which I don't think is even necessarily one that's like, I don't know, genocidal or anything. Like, no one's saying that it's, a lot of people, because of course there are people who absolutely are, what you look in the Trump administration right now, right, and there's people who actively
Yeah.
want LGBTQ people dead, but baked into society in not openly malicious forms are assumptions about gender and sex which do harm trans people. And I think it is important for, it's going back to the sort of the theme of the debate, it is important for people on the left to talk about this, because
Yeah.
ultimately, if you want to, if by left wing we sort of mean wanting justice and wanting to break down unjust power structures and stuff, and sort of have equity and equality and such, like, we've got to talk about how LGBTQ people aren't given that equality, are having their bodies policed by people, and I think it's important.
No, I agree with that. Like I have a few, like I'm trying to okay, I'm gonna name drop some people here. Buck Angel, Blair White, Scott Nugent, the offensive tranny. I can't remember his name. Marcus, the offensive tranny, and there's a whole bunch of others. Those are the ones I can just name off the top of my head. This is where I love this, because I don't mean describe things the way that I think you've described it, but I'm just going to say what I think. Owen, is that the I guess the common view seems to be that those who are trans or gay or LGBTQ are all over here on the left. There are so many of them on the right. There are so many of them in the middle. Trans people and gay people are not a monolithic structure who all believe the same thing. So many of them have come out and gone, yo, I don't agree with this stuff. I'm on their side. And I'm sitting there thinking, that's really interesting. How come I'm hearing only from this one trans person on YouTube or wherever it is, but I never hear about it in society. I never hear about it from my friends. I never hear about it in the news. In the news and in the media, it's always, if you're on the left, you must be in favor of these people. Absolutely, 100%, never question anything. When the reality is actually quite different. And one of the things I've found out recently, I felt recently, I suppose, especially in the last 6 months or so, is I've been starting to pay attention a lot more to the right. And I found that the right are ironically incredibly diverse, authentically diverse, not diverse because they had to tick a box, but they're just diverse. They have gay people, they have trans people, they have black people, they have Mexican people, they have white people. And I'm sitting there thinking, hang on a minute. I thought these guys were supposed to be the racists. I thought these guys were supposed to be the white supremacists. And I feel as though they've taught me the complete opposite. And maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe it's just what I've seen. But I mean, yeah, it's my perspective. So, oh, you're muted. You're muted again.
Did it again. Yeah, just yeah, it's late. It's late in the UK.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go soon too.
So yeah, I'll come on to that in a moment. So briefly on, you're absolutely right. There's no, I think an intersectional analysis would quickly tell us that, of course, it's, and just basically logic, right? Not everyone.
Yeah, of course. I mean, not everybody's going to be on one team. So.
Exactly, right? In the same way that, like, race isn't real in the sense that, like, black people aren't like some hive mind. It's the same thing with other things, right?
Yeah.
The reason more LGBTQ people are going to be on the left is for that same reason, which is that left-wing ideals largely deal with sort of the injustices in society,
social safety net, and making sure everybody's got a leg
right?
up. Absolutely.
And also traditionally and today the place in which firstly LGBTQ people aren't going to be like had slurs said against them, misgendered and such, and secondly actively campaign for those causes. I do think it's interesting though that there's also an element of like for Blair White, say, I know about Buck Angel. I don't really know about the other two you said, but she can say a lot of opinions which are quite anti-LGBTQ in their own way, but many on the in the right wing circles she's in and in the government and such that she supports do not support her, be it viewing her in a way which is transphobic, passing laws which means she can't actually use the like facilities and such that she would probably want to use, and for as much as Blair, like even just misgendering her, right? Like there are people
Yeah.
in those circles who won't even call her Blair White.
Oh yeah, a lot of
that,
people on the conservative side will definitely refer to Blair as he.
exactly, right?
Yeah.
And I think that this is also part of the reason why, like for as much, of course, no two people have exactly the same thoughts and you can't just predict. But the reason generally it's on the left is because let's just say it, there's less of a danger, right? In
Oh,
some
of
of those
course.
circles,
I know why it's
really
on the
dangerous.
left. Like I'm not shocked at all as to why that's a predominantly left wing thing. I mean, it makes sense. So.
And then to come on to what you were saying about like more diversity, you said more authentic diversity, and
Yeah.
like I mean, sort of instinctively say no. But,
Can I flesh that out a little?
Go on. You explain what you mean, please. If that's
So I guess what I feel by that is, so and again, I'm not trying to brag or anything like that, but like I lived in Scotland till I was 24. I lived in the UK till I was 24. I lived in Australia for a couple of years, lived in New Zealand for 12 years, Canada for 10 years. And I see common patterns, and sometimes things are weird and quirky and only happen in New Zealand and only happen in Scotland, but there are certain things that happen throughout them all. And one of the things I've noticed throughout them all is that there's a kind of a liberal sense of making sure that everybody is heard and almost, and that's good. I mean, we all want to be heard, of course, but there's been an outsized influence of, or focus, I should suppose, on certain not like often minority groups, but perceived minority groups. Do you know what I mean by that? So, like in Canada, we have First Nations, Mi'kmaq, and all bunch of people who live where I live, who are First Nations native North Americans. Look up Mi'kmaq or Mi'kmaq, Migmaw, and you'll see that. But those people don't get a mention, but trans people do. And now I'm sitting here in Nova Scotia thinking, hang on a minute, Mi'kmaq people are probably like 6% of the population, and trans people are like 0.0001% of the population. Why is government policy focusing on 0.001 and not on these guys? That blows my mind, because when I lived in New Zealand for a long time, as I'm what's called Ngāti Pākehā, which is the white tribe. And we, in New Zealand, in the Aotearoa New Zealand, you have all these like really immersive like Maori cultural stuff. And here it's like very little, but there's an outsized focus, massively outsized focus on perceived minorities. And I do feel like it's perceived, because I definitely think there's a little bit of a social contagion among some of the stuff. And I feel that because we see it peaking and dropping again recently. So I don't know.
I think there's no reason that governments can't cater to everyone, right? Like
both.
I think to everyone, to all groups. The part of the reason that LGBTQ like people appear to have the presence of like a disproportionate like representation is because it's a very recent. It's only been a very short period of time in the modern sort of Western world that they've had legality, right? Like we're not that far removed from
legality. Or sort of acceptance, I suppose, yeah.
No, legality, right? Because it was banned in many places. You couldn't be gay. You couldn't have a non-heterosexual relationship. And
how long has it been? How long has it been banned in like the UK or the West?
It was decriminalised in the 60s, right?
So that's long before I was born, and I'm almost 50.
But it's only a few generations, really. And if you think as well, it's not just like the actual decriminalization, it's also getting it into protection laws, making sure it's you phase out people who like, because imagine you have been someone who's discriminated against, like, not you personally.
Yeah, of
Imagine
course.
you, sorry, excuse me.
It's okay.
So I'm getting over a cold as well.
How are
So,
you?
what was I saying? So, like, yeah, imagine someone who is in charge of some institution or has some position in a decent like standing, holds homophobic views. That has an effect in the same way that like a sexist or racist, someone with those views is going to influence how they hire people, how they treat people, etc.,
Hmm.
etc.
Yeah,
So even when you pass a law that decriminalizes it, it takes time for the actual effect of
that's true.
a
Yeah,
better policy
to hit the high
to pass
street
through.
until everybody kind of accepts it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it takes time for it to be recognized, and then also as well, there's an element of it still being something we have to think about. There's been active attempt in Section 28 in the UK. An
I remember
anti.
that in the late 90s. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. So like
Yeah.
it's not as though it's like just a straight line upwards with a positive gradient towards from bigotry to progress. Like there are
Yeah,
going to
of
be
course.
ongoing battles. So I think
So,
that's probably why it's still going to be in the conversation of people trying to
yeah,
pass laws and such.
that makes sense. So I remember the 90s when it was talked about the Section 28 don't promote homosexuality. And in schools and so on and education and all that, there was always, and I grew up in a time where it was like, oh, who cares? Like, well, it's just, whatever. We all had, people who were gay friends. And but the thing is, and I find this interesting, and this is where I find myself at odds with probably people like yourself and my friends, is that let's just say we went through a civil rights progression with gay rights. And I feel like the gay rights were won for the most part. I would hope so anyway. And I would certainly want to make sure that we make sure that's fair. But because what we're going through now is another civil rights movement, doesn't mean it's the same as the one before. The one before was about acceptance. I am gay. I am lesbian. This is just the way I want to be. Leave me alone. And I get that. That seems like a perfectly fair argument. Why would anyone be against that? This one that we're going through now, and we have been going through for the last 10 years, is not about leave me alone, I'm just X or Y. It's affirm me. Make sure that I get access to certain hormones and scalpels, potentially scalpels. And then and coupled with the idea with the fact that many of these people who are doing this are very, very young and cannot consent. They cannot consent to a scalpel. They cannot consent to hormones. They cannot consent to it. If we are going to allow young minors to do this, that's cool. Advocate. If that's what you want to do, then please advocate for it. That's fine. But you also have to advocate for all the other stuff. Get rid of the second judicial system. They're not minors. They're just humans. Get rid of making sure that they can have tattoos, like having sex, marry, join the army, have
No, but I
all
think
the. There's no point in having a separation of adults and minors if you're going to make these issues happen at the minor level without their consent, which we know they cannot consent. Now, a gay
the
kid
thing is though.
never had to consent or not consent. It was just gay.
Okay, but this is a little bit where you introduced the idea that the children can't consent to this. This is I think it's a bit disingenuous to sort of compare trans affirming care, which is about a person's own autonomy and status and such, to like joining the army and
Well, that's the
getting married
nice
and
version.
stuff.
That's the nice version. I mean, and a person's autonomy to decide what they want to do with their own body. Of course, it sounds nice, but at the same
But it's
time,
scientifically the right thing to do, right? Like you're not. It's not as though it's for one. They don't perform like critical life-changing surgeries on like 8-year-olds and stuff.
Not on
The
8-year-olds, but they do on 12 to 14-year-olds.
the
That's still
scientists
very, very young.
like
That's far
the
too young.
scientifically the thing is though the scientifically approved stuff as peer-reviewed sciences
I mean, I'll
journals and
argue
such have
about what's
said.
approved or not. I mean, it's, but
Well, the experts in the field who are responsible for the duty of care, it's not as though it's like they're just, oh yes, let's change this. Like there's no like mass surgeries happening,
well,
and as well
well,
like
actually, with the closure of the Tavistock Clinic and the release of the Cass review, it kind of has scientifically proven that there has been, and this is just in the
the
UK,
CAS review
an
has
issue.
been called into question quite severely by numerous
Every
other
every
teachers.
s- but every survey, every review you bring out would be called into question by someone. Every single survey that comes out with this side would be called into question by someone else.
No, but
But don't
one
you
has
think we
been
should err? Don't you think you should err on the side of caution? Don't you think we
the
should err
call
on the
like.
side of protect the kids because they might change their mind
I mean,
one day?
even that line alone. I mean, how many bad faith movements have been hinged on like some sort of a call to protect the kids in a
Oh,
way
true.
which like
Oh, no, no doubt. That's absolutely been propagandized throughout history. Absolutely. But that doesn't mean that it's invalid. I have kids. I want to protect my kids. And I've told them as far as I can, as nice as I can, and as liberal as I can, here's biology. Here's what I think. Here's what we think. Hey, you see what you think. But
it's like how you like children get vaccinated because we scientifically have realized that this is what's important for them, right? Like
yeah.
there are going to be people who are uncomfortable with that. There's going to be people who think, yeah, if kids should have like it's their choice to wait till they're older, etc. But we know that actually this needs to happen and such. Similarly,
I don't remember seeing a massive movement, a political movement or a civil rights movement that was ever against vaccines.
well, there was a big push
There's
against
a few
vaccines, though.
right-wing crazies who are against vaccines, but there's
It
not.
was a it was a big deal in the early 2000s. People, a large movement of pseudoscientists were pushing against it, and unfortunately today in the Trump administration, you've got people who with really terrible scientific like pseudoscientific beliefs just actively
Oh, I
able to
agree.
push
I agree
their
with that. And
right.
and and I've seen the rise of the concern about the measles vaccines going to cause all sorts. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
yeah, exactly right.
I've
Um,
had all the vaccines, and I'm still here. As far as I know, I'm still fine. So,
myself as
like,
well, right? I mean, Timothy here says the same thing that
oh, we've got some viewers. Cool.
we do indeed. I was wondering if it was going to be just. I mean, I'm doing this
Well,
very late in the
actually, I was
UK.
wondering if we had any. I'm going to have to go soon because my wife just came home recently, and we had a little bit of a tiff with my daughter today, so I have to go and like deal with that.
Oh no, well.
But this is really unique, and I didn't want to like give up on this, Owen, because this is like I've never had anybody invite me on something before.
Do you need
So
to go from now? Do you need to dash at this moment in time, or
in maybe 7 or 8 minutes, I think
no problem?
I think
Okay.
we'll be okay.
We can always do a part two.
Of course, yeah,
When
and this is great, by the way, and thank you so much for being civil, because one of the things that, and actually, can I just ask, how did you find my stuff? It was because I left the left.
I get tons of like videos from sort of I don't want to say smaller creators, but like just people with view counts sort of around the like hundreds and such.
Right. I have
Just
another channel,
recommended.
like, so I've been on YouTube for like 10 years, but this channel you found me on is like a new one that I just started last month.
That's really peculiar. Yeah, I just get. I'll show you a screenshot later if you want. Just like random videos pop up in my
Cool, cool.
recommended.
But
Sometimes I get
what can I just say? The reason you found that video is, and probably is because of what happened with Charlie Kirk last month. I'm as le- I was about to say I'm as left wing as you can possibly be, but that's obviously not true because I like Charlie Kirk. So there are certain things that I feel as though I've been on the left, and then I've been on the right a little bit, and then I've been on the left again most of my adult life. Just in this last year, I've gone right to the center, and in the center, it sounds like I know something you don't, but I honestly swear to God, I feel like just recently I've been in a position where I can see both sides for the most part. Obviously, there are certain things I can't see, but how I feel is I see one of the biggest things that pushed me to make that video to move to the right, and I'm not on the right by any stretch of the imagination, but perceptionally from your side, it looks as though I'm probably on the right, is because of the reaction to Charlie Kirk. It changed everything for me, and not just me, but lots of people have seen and heard this stuff and been like, I cannot support this stuff anymore. And it's hard because a lot of us can't put it into words just yet, and maybe I'm not putting it into words just yet myself either. That there's something has changed just in this last month, and I've feared for a long time and predicted for a long time, probably for 3 or 4 years, that we're going to have a right wing future, and that people. I always thought that Trump was a blip, and Biden was the back to the normal. I actually think it's the other way around. I think Biden was the blip, and Trump is the normal. And we all have to get ready for it, especially even in Canada. I have to be ready for it. And I think in the UK, you have to be ready for it too. I honestly, if I had to make a prediction, I think this is the way things are going from now on. And we have to just, there's a certain resurgent right, but it's not the old right of 10 years ago. It's a new right. It's a diverse right. It's a authentic right. And I don't know if you can see it, but I feel like I've seen it. And I'm curious to see where it goes.
It's interesting. I mean, I think just quickly, Timothy in the chat says a question regarding Charlie Kirk. How can some people say that they do not believe in objectiveness, but will stand up and say he was objectively hateful? It makes no sense to me. And I suppose that's timely because it ties into sort of my. If I start from what you were saying about Charlie Kirk, I think that it's always tricky with death, right? Because we in society are, we're sort of. A lot of people don't speak about it. I'm very fortunate that I've not been to many funerals, but it's a little bit of a taboo, right? Like it's hard to talk about death in a way because
it's a taboo. It's taboo, especially in Britain. Especially in Britain, and I feel like you and I have we're similar. It's just you don't really talk about it that much. We get drunk and we have a wake, and
right, like there's always like an element of when someone dies, like how do you approach it? How do you speak about that person? And that is tricky for a lot of people. And I suppose when you see people reacting to Charlie Kirk's death in different ways, some celebrating, some genuinely upset, some indifferent, it can be tricky to look at that and think, wow, I've got to sort of continue in the same circles as these people. But I think that, and I will be quite critical here, I think that Charlie Kirk, the way he acted in his life, the things he said, the way he conducted himself, his actions of his organization are why people had reactions that they did. Because it said here how he was objectively hateful. Well, he campaigned against people's rights, be it actively saying he wanted the Civil Rights Act removed, be it talking about LGBTQ people, his views on women's rights, gender and such. Like, these aren't things which are consolable. And I think even his sort of position is like, I want to debate people. I think, you look at what he was doing with his Turning Point organization, he was making lists of academics and getting them put in a list of academics that he disagreed with out in front of his very large audience, many of whom were quite vociferous individuals. And I think that, especially in this moment where, as we say, it's been a rightwards sort of political shift, right? Like there's, whilst I disagree that it's like with the idea that we're going to be right wing for a long time and such, I think it's hard to predict the future. Of course, there's been the way the right wing and far right and such have taken power in lots of countries and sort of on the ascendancy in lots of countries is definitely something worth commenting on. But I don't think that it's inevitable. I think that there's also an element of this being the way capitalist societies go, like the decay of capitalism into fascism, the way that the fact we haven't really had. I mean, it's not as though like it's been a left wing to right wing thing. It's been what centre right neoliberal Tony Blair esque politics that have not really done as promised, led to conservatives, sort of a back and forth between varying degrees of right wing that have led to a further right reaction, whilst people who are like a Bernie Sanders type who even then aren't particularly like radical left, they're just more left wing than what has been seen before, can't quite get the political support. So I think that there's a lot there, and I'm going to cough quickly because I'm almost getting done.
No worries. I'm trying. You said a lot there, so I'm trying to think about what to respond to. But I think that when we just work my way backwards, like Bernie Sanders, for example, is a really good one, because I really like Bernie Sanders and I've always liked Bernie Sanders. But he's a left winger in the States, but he's not a left winger. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
there are, like, you have to compare contextually what country we're talking about. Like, for example, even the most right-wing conservative in Canada is probably super left-wing in the States. Do you know what I mean? Like, even Pierre Poilievre would be considered to be quite left-wing in the States.
America is a very right-wing country.
Absolutely, yeah. And actually, you may be surprised to know that New Zealand is too. Not from a, what's the word when you have an aggressive foreign policy? I've forgotten the word, but in a domestic sense, everybody stands up for themselves and does whatever they want. New Zealand, I always found very right wing, even though as a country it was a bit more egalitarian. But yeah, sorry, you said a whole bunch of stuff there, and I'm
there are a few things there. No, I could feel the sort of cough making my way up my mouth. I think that there's another interesting comment. He didn't campaign against people's rights. He campaigned for what's normal and what is morally correct. Well, Timothy, I can't say I agree with that. I mean, he did quite openly say civil rights, that shouldn't be a thing. But in this last part as well, he didn't care about societal views and societal approval, and we need more of that. Well, I mean, we live in society. Like, ultimately, I know that's a meme, right? Like, we live in a society, but it's true. We can't not care about what people think, and the whole point is that we have to try and work together to relate to each other.
And I think that's what the right wing forgets a lot of the time. They don't think of the collective. They always think about the individual.
Yeah, but that is like, it's almost like an intentional thing, right? Like, for a lot of them, it's not. I think it's always, we say right wing, and we're talking about a lot of people, right? Like, it's not as though, again,
it's
like
very basic.
People aren't like a hive mind inherently,
of course.
But I always try and separate it between, you said earlier, right? The there's conservatives that are neighbours and people around us and such, right, in society, and there's conservatives who are politicians and doing things. I think someone who calls himself conservative has things that I'm going to disagree with them on, right? And I should be criticised and such, but conservative attitudes and ideas are baked into society, so necessarily there's going to be a lot of people that will hold elements of conservative views on things which should still be criticised and called out, but like still can be discussed with. To me, Charlie Kirk is separate from that, because here's someone who's paid quite a lot of money to, by often quite shady causes, right, to say things for a right wing agenda, in some cases promoting fossil fuel corporations, in some cases anti-LGBT causes, anti-abortion, anti-civil rights. And so this is why this is why there is going to be I don't really think that, like, if people upset that people are laughing at him and such, even after his passing, like, that is the consequence of the life he led, and ultimately, whether the fact that it was quite a graphic and violent death is something that people have to is going to be tricky. But
did you see
ultimately,
it?
Sorry,
Did you see it?
I actually didn't see it. I didn't like. It sounded when it was all going on. I sort of like wasn't real. Like in my mind, there's something because like everyone reacts to death a different way, right? For me personally, whilst I am never going to criticize, you never criticize someone for their reaction to an event, right?
Of
For
course.
me, I didn't feel like I wanted to go out and search for
No,
videos of someone
you
dying, if that
shouldn't. You
makes
shouldn't
sense.
watch it. It's horrible. But what I find, and again, and I'm going to end on this. I hope this is okay because I have to go soon.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah,
But
we'll just talk about it another time.
um, I don't mean to end on this because I'm going to have the final word, and you're not going to say anything because I'm the right winger and you're the left winger. There's nothing
No,
like
it's fine.
that.
I'll talk to the chat for a little bit.
It's nothing like that. Um, and I've said this before. Like I grew up in the '90s, and I remember going to the pub and having a beer with friends who were just like Charlie Kirk. They were just like Charlie Kirk, bro. I was probably like him at some point. We would just shoot the shit and say whatever the hell we wanted. Now, that doesn't mean that we went around bashing gays or black people. You know what I mean? It was nothing like that. It was just honest to God people going for a beer and having seriously different opinions on various political topics, whether it was abortion or whatever. And then you know what we'd do afterwards? We would go, well, fuck you. Here's another beer, and then we'd all go home. And I am upset that those days are gone. I'm upset that if I was to do that now, and I was to go to a pub now and have a chat with someone now and go, hey, you know what? I don't agree with abortion, and here's why. That I have to risk my life now. That's not liberalism. That's not leftism. That's something else. And I don't know what the fuck it is, but it's not the society I want to live in. I want to live in a society where I can say what I want, but we all have to take like offense is received, not given. Have you ever heard of that? Where
I've heard of that.
do you know what I mean? Like it's a bit
Makes
of
me
a
raise an
cliche,
eyebrow slightly.
but it's also true to a certain extent. Like 80% of our life is what we react to, and 20% is what we're given. It's like I'm still trying to learn this now because I'm always way too offended, way too affected by other people saying shit or doing stuff in external circumstances. And I'm trying to fight that. I'm trying to be like, you know what? I'm trying to be more resilient. And the way I see it is Charlie Kirk was trying to make people more resilient. And respectfully, I do think you've mischaracterized him quite a bit. I would hope that you would go and look at some of the stuff that you think he said and maybe watch the whole, because my God, there are hundreds of hours of Charlie Kirk stuff out there, probably thousands of hours. And I really, really think it's unfair as an old school lefty that the way he's been mischaracterized. It really made me shift from full moderate left to very center leaning right. And that was the reaction to Charlie Kirk's death was made me do that. It might just be me, but I have a funny feeling it's not just me. I have a funny feeling millions and millions of people are going to vote right wing in whatever next national election comes up, wherever country you're listening to this. I just think that it was a bigger deal than most people are giving it credit for. He was a very much a rising star and intellectual. So I know you might think that's crazy, but he was very smart. He had the ear of all the right people, and he was part of a movement, and I just feel like, man, by killing him, I don't know what's coming next, but it's not going to be good. Anyway.
Well, interesting thoughts. I can't say I agree, but I'm sure we can go into it.
Can we do this again? This is great.
Yeah, we'll do a part 2 at some point, I'm sure. Yeah?
I'd love to.
Anyway, I will not keep you from your family.
Thanks,
you have
pal.
a nice evening, Muzz. I think I'll react to some of these comments in the chat, and yeah, we'll you can drop me an email or something, and we'll get something else sorted next time. Yeah,
sounds good.
Fantastic evening.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Owen.
Bye.
See ya.
Right then, so whilst I'm here, there's a few comments that Timothy has left. I think just briefly actually before we discuss them on, and I'll save this to us next time. Charlie Kirk, ultimately, where like it's always tricky because he is now going to be a big talking point, right? You've got the president mentioning him in America, you've got people in the UK chanting him and such. But my reaction to it is more in the same way the Reichstag fire was used by the Nazis as a tool. It's something's been astroturfed a little bit by conservatives to think about the enforcement of right-wing values and such, and the way they can try and sculpt conversations and societal discourse to their own agenda, right? Like, it's a very useful tool to shut down conversation, which is ironic given the way they've presented Mr. Cook. And I think that that's just a bit, it's a bit rubbish. It shouldn't be at all something which comes up in conversation. Ultimately, this is yet another death in America through the violent way politics takes shape in that country. And the ways you could actually talk about it in a proper way are lost in this right-wing cultural nonsense. The idea, just go back to this comment again. I mean, how can someone say he didn't campaign against people's rights? He did. He actively did. I mean, if you're an LGBTQ person, Charlie Kirk was saying all sorts of horrible stuff about you. And, we'll get into it next time with Muzz, but the context is just as bad. Like, an hour of him talking about stuff is no defense for any of those clips because they're all just filled with the same vitriol and hatred. Like he that awful list. Like, you imagine being an academic and your name appears on one of these lists. You've got his fans emailing you hate. You've got them, trying to get you fired from your job, sending bomb threats to the university. Like, it's terrible. And like, at that point, people are like, well, it's not Charlie Kirk doing that. But, it's him who creates the list, right? It's his organisation. He knows what's in his fan base. More coughing come. I really should pick another time to do this. I'm not ill. Timothy is still in the chat. Timothy says he didn't campaign against rights. He told people that they can believe in whatever they want. He just refused to agree. Well, that's just not quite true, is it? I mean, if you're using your multi-million dollar company to propagate against people's status in society, you're saying that you should tear up various rights, abortion, LGBTQ rights, voting rights. These things are not like, these aren't conducive to people's rights and well-being. It's not like just some theoretical discussion. This is someone campaigning for the removal of rights in society and the changing of society to a far-right view. And we know this because he was sponsored and financed by senior Republicans who also have the same goals. This is someone who had a clear agenda, and I don't think that can be ignored when talking about him. His worldview was a violent one. And if you're going to talk about political violence, then you got to start with the far right. You got to start with the systems around us, and the obviously wider the capitalist structures and stuff. But before that, not so much. Timothy says, so because he doesn't agree, it's hate speech. Well, it was hateful and it was speech. It's not about agreement or not. If you can't disagree with someone's existence, right? You can't disagree with someone's like state of being, and ultimately, this is hateful towards the people he was against. I also think too that it's a silly way of looking at it. Like to frame this through this lens is to ignore the things he said. Now let's pull up some of the things he said. Actually, let's have a look at some of Charlie's quotes. How can I do this? Let's see. I think I can share the screen. Here we go. You should be able to see this. So we've got Charlie Kirk, in his own words, prowling blacks, great replacement strategy. You know, and it's just a long, long list of just awful things. I mean, if I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified. Well, what's that saying, right? Like, why would you target someone? Why would your first thought when you get into a plane be, what is the race of the pilot? Like, that is just racist. Like, that is textbook, right? You know, why do you bring attention to it? How a pilot would get into the cockpit of a plane, you know, and not be immensely qualified, that one of the most talented aviators on the planet. It's just crazy. Next one, if you're a WNBA, pot-smoking black lesbian, do you get treated better than a United States Marine? just nonsense cultural stuff, right? Happening all the time in urban America. Prowling blacks go around for fun, to go target white people. That's a fact. It's happening more and more. Prowling blacks. What an awful way to describe people, eh? This is a man that's not hateful and not racist. Like, just shocking. If I'm dealing with somebody in customer service who's a moronic black woman, I wonder, is she there because of her excellence, or is she there because of affirmative action? It's just terrible. Like, I could read all of these, but I will not be doing that because my voice is starting to go. This is an example of a man who is awful, and had he not died, he would have continued being awful. And I think whilst we're here talking about his death, you know, we still don't have all the details. There's an ongoing investigation and such. In America, a violent, gun-loaded country, these sort of deaths are common. The same day that he died, there was a school shooting, and there were more school shootings since then. Like, it's a country just rife with violence, and I think, firstly, like, the idea that this has anything to do with, like, the left, or even the right or anything, it's just people just kill each other in America to staggeringly high numbers. Like, I find it very frustrating when we just point out that America's a country which has been beset with violence since its inception. You know, they're built on slavery. So, you know, built on mass racial violence that has made it wealthy and then sustained itself throughout its history. You know, the violence against working people, violence against women, violence against LGBTQ people. There's no pause from it. I just think it's staggering that people can centre on Kirk's death as though it's just peace and harmony until this one moment. You know, as though we're not seeing the systemic elimination of immigrant populations and foreign-sounding people in America via ICE. Another comment from Timothy. Timothy, we're going to have to talk at some point, aren't we? We're going to have an actual conversation. I've been watched by 14 people, apparently. My goodness. Where have you all come from? That was talking about how DEI is manipulative to certain criteria of society. When an airline company says, we're not hiring you if you're not black or a woman, isn't that considered a form of hate talk? So diversity, equity, inclusion is literally just a framework to, you know, countering the elements of society which have been harmful. So you imagine it's 1960, right? Hello, Dalian. How are you? Hope you're well. The way we think about society is, you know, filtered through the No Justice rate. That is very kind. Thank you, No Justice. Yeah, so Charlie Kirk is what we're talking about at the moment, and Timothy's left a comment here. Not this one. DEI. So America, country that's just openly been racist for centuries, like its whole existence, basically. And if you are thinking about DEI, wow, there are tons of you now. My goodness, I'm gonna get nervous, right? And my voice is going and everything. You know, DEI. We're thinking about a country which is deeply racist, and so people have put in place a framework to try and counter some of it. To try and think, okay, how can we be mindful of the fact that we live in a country which openly had segregation and still has many people in higher positions which openly want Jim Crow back? And so we have DEI, which says, okay, well, let's consider people from different backgrounds in a way that's not just going to disguise them and hide them and such. And yeah, America's a country which has systemic racialized poverty, systemic racialized incarceration, unequal, inequitable education systems. So there needs to be effort to find people who are in underdeveloped neighborhoods and such, right? Because that is the case for loads of Americans, and disproportionately, they're going to be black, they're going to be poor, working class, they're going to be LGBTQ. And the hysteria that we're seeing from the right is nothing new, firstly, because before DEI, it was woke, it was PC, it was critical race theory, it's whatever the buzzword is at the time to think about the way societal discrimination exists. And that's why they're focusing so much on it, because a lot of them in that government want to harker back to the racist parts of America, white supremacy and such. And so when you got Charlie Kirk prattling off racist BS about black pilots, who he's got no idea about, right? He's not even, he admits himself, like in this fictional scenario, he's just seen one. So he's got no idea of this person's qualifications. This individual is in the cockpit, right? They're uniquely more qualified than 99.99% of people on the planet. Yet Charlie Kirk feels because they're a black pilot that he's got some authority to question them. Now, no doubt he's just being edgy, right? He's on his he was on his silly little videos making stupid comments. But this edginess is what is now Republican discourse, this vitriol, this nastiness. It's what they define themselves by, just being horrible and then morphing it into policy. It's why ICE post AI videos of like immigrants getting captured and stuff, and people getting deported. It's not anything that's going to actually help with American policy. It has nothing to do with any substantive real world thing. It's just to give the impression of triggering the libs and winning against the left and stuff. And so Charlie's whole, that list I was reading off a second ago, that is part of it. The element of nastiness. The voice is going again. Let me drink some water. This is fascinating, Timothy. How is DEI battling racism with racism? No one is putting down anyone based on their race. What we're doing, or what was being done with it, is challenging the racist structures which exist in society. Again, imagine you're in America like a few years after the Civil Rights Act is passed, right? And discrimination laws start coming in, anti-discrimination laws. Sure, you've got that law, but you've got people applying it who don't care for what has changed. They're still the same racists they were last year, last decade, last century even, right? Like, because it's not as though you can eliminate the inbuilt racism in the society. So it's not counterproductive. It was a structure to address the long-standing causes. Now, long term, there is an element of it needs to go further. The whole structure of the country needs to be fundamentally addressed, right? And that will involve deconstructing a lot of capitalism and, if we're honest, all of it, right? But that can't be achieved overnight. That can't be achieved certainly within the American system. So, yeah, that's going to be something which you need programs like DEI and sort of critical analysis of things to think about. It's one that has to be more. We could literally pull up nasty things anyone has said. Well, this is just silly, isn't it? Because like the idea, firstly, anyone, this isn't anyone. This is someone with a massive platform and millions of GOP dollars funding, whose job is spreading a far-right agenda. You don't go on the stream to your multi-million audience and say, yeah, the Civil Rights Act should be repealed. That's what you do if you're a fascist, if you're someone who has a direct goal. And nasty things as well. I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't have a history of saying things like that, and you didn't probably either, Timothy, because we're not fascists. I mean, I have no idea. I've never met you before, Timothy, right? But I think it's fair to assume you haven't got a massive media network and you've not got a long history of really awful things being said and such, right? So I think there's a real questionable element to this line of argument. I missed one before it, but wouldn't DEI remove the importance of merit? No, the merit was being removed by the racist system that came before it. If you segregated your population for decades and before that literally enslaved them, you've missed out on all their merit. You've literally said these people are subhuman, they're less than us, they shouldn't be in the same space as us. And again, it's not that long ago, people alive today, voters today, were living in segregation, right? So yes, they needed it, but we need a system to be a method, a framework to be able to question what is going into these practices. What is in society which is making us overlook both systemically and individually people from marginalized backgrounds. If like with the example of aviation, like you have to go through so much training to be a pilot. It's such a critical and sensitive industry, and I think that it's really like the idea that they just like go to somewhere in Chicago and like pull someone out. It's like, yeah, you're going to be a pilot now. Like you're black. It's just ridiculous, isn't it? Like, of course not. It's an intentional hysteria created to make people think, yeah, there's a black person there. I'm going to question their judgment, which Charlie did, as we sort of saw in those quotes a minute ago, which he encouraged his audience to do as well. And it's not just Charlie; it was tons of them. There are loads of right wing culture war manipulators, influencers, and such. I know Muzz was saying on the stream, millions of people have been affected by it, but I think it's a little bit of a misleading argument. I don't doubt there's a lot of people who will vote for right wing and far right parties, and a lot of them will even say Charlie Kirk's what prompted them to, but they were already quite right wing. I mean, if you are like there saying, yeah, black people, have they been hired legitimately or have they been a DEI hire? Like, you've already been influenced by racism. You're already on the way, and it's not just Kirk; it's tons of them. They're all over the place on the internet. So no, I don't think that's a fair point. But like, even just the way that like Charlie Kirk has been used by a lot of these people on the right, it sort of to me signals that the real disrespect is from them, like, because ultimately, like, even like his memorial funeral thing a few weeks ago, where you've got like influencers running around using it as an opportunity to promote their own stuff, like they've done. You had like loads of religious people, sort of evangelical right-wing types promoting their stuff, and that sort of brand of religion is already rife with advertising and sort of telemarketing and stuff. You've got Trump and stuff not even waiting until the body's cold to use it as a political tool. Like, yeah, we're going to get the left because they've disrespected Kirk and stuff. Like, it's obvious what's going on. Like, it's obvious they don't really care, And I think there is an important thing, and I will, like I said when I was talking to Muzz earlier, it is important to say that, yes, death is something which is scary and unpleasant. And like I said earlier, I'm not going to go out and try and find a video that of him dying and stuff. I didn't at the time or now, because it is a human life that has died. But wanting human life to survive has a political element to it. People on the right don't. Kirk did not care for the consequences of his words throughout his entire, right-wing turn. He even said, he said himself, gun violence, it's just something that has to continue. When if we have a Second Amendment, he was callous and vitriolic and horrible, and that's the life he led. And ultimately, when you live a life like that, when you're a far right provocateur, like, this is the legacy you leave behind, and so people are going to react a certain way. Not in a way that justifies what Trump and such is doing, not anything that's to do with that, but that is life we live. A few more of these before I stop, because my voice is starting to. I'm feeling it's like knives scratching back there. Sorry, I forgot to mute that one. Timothy again, but isn't Delta Airlines 50% proposal for African American and women pilots not a shot at merit in some fashion? If I have 20 years flying experience versus your 2 years, but you get the job due to skin colour, wouldn't that discredit my merit? So again, when you're looking at a population which has not had the tools to get into these programs, you're not like discrediting anyone. You know, you're not like just plucking someone out and just putting them in a job that someone else is more qualified for. You're saying we're going to try and offer our programs are, let's be clear, very intensive, very academically rigorous qualifications and programs and such to someone from a background which is less likely to have those resources. You know, like if you're going through the school system in America, it's massively mediated by class, by race, by gender, by geography, sexuality. These factors influence your likelihood to get to college, which is ridiculously expensive, and you know, access equivalent programs which you need to do to become a pilot. You know, I've got I know people at university who do piloting. It costs loads. You have to have so much to, you know, actually get through pilot school, and a lot of them, you know, they are either fortunate to have had scholarships, you know, or have come from quite wealthy backgrounds, and so the reason these programs exist is because, firstly, you have massive racial inequalities, but secondly, it's just an element of capitalism. Like, they want more people to draw from, so they go to neighborhoods where they haven't necessarily always looked before. Like, to some extent, this is just obvious. You know, if you want there to be enough competent pilots to fly, you know, thousands of planes every single day, you need there to be a lot of pilots trained. And where are you going to go for that? You're going to go to massive urban, often populations that haven't had the opportunities. Because as well, there's only going to be so many people that want to be a pilot. Like, it's a tricky, tough job with high risks. You know, if you can't, like, for as much as flying by plane isn't the like disaster people make it out to be, it is still a job that if it goes wrong, you know, you've good chance you'll die. Right? You have to be quite qualified, and it's one that, you know, you're away from home quite a bit. There's a lot of stuff going on. Anyway. My voice is going. I want to thank No Justice for sending her audience my way. If you were listening and you've just come from there, I really hope the quality drop wasn't too much. It's a professional setup over there, and I'm very much just like some guy who's thrown on a pair of headphones. But hopefully I'll be doing a few more streams like this. I've got a few more. The first part of this video was a debate with someone who said they'd left the left recently and they were sort of more in the centre now, had some more right-wing ideas. I do conversations like that, because I find it quite interesting, partly my research, partly just something to do, right, in politically unstable times. But happy to talk to anyone, basically. And Timothy, yes, we will definitely have a conversation at some point. Thank you all for listening. It's been a pleasure, and hopefully my voice will recover next time I do one of these. Take care all, and good night all.